Hi, everyone, and welcome to Barefoot with Spirit podcast show. I'm your host, Leanne, the Barefoot Medium, and I'm incredibly excited to connect with you all. For those of you who don't know me, I'm an international medium, twin flame, intuitive criminal investigator, and a transformational coach who is absolutely blessed to connect people with their passed over loved ones and to also bring through channeled guidance and wisdom to help people manifest and create the life they desire, and to connect with their twin flame or soulmate and bring through that sacred union in this lifetime. Now, before we get started, I'd like to just take a moment to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I stand and on which my guest stands, and pay respects to elders past, present, and emerging. And I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and First Nations people who are tuning in from all over the world. Now, kick off your shoes and take a few deep breaths into your heart space and step into this sacred container for a deep, intimate, and connected conversation with Elinor, who is one of the founders of Truth of You, a multidisciplinary practice where she combines grounded spiritual wisdom, psychology, with timeless divination practices and somatic experiences to help people investigate, explore, and deconstruct the layers of identity to seek answers to two of life's most important questions: who and what am I? Welcome, Elinor.
Such a pleasure and privilege to be in this energy and to have this conversation with you, Leanne. And as you were doing your introduction, I just felt energy waves and how beautiful this path is, how beautiful it is to be in divine union. And that is when you really start feeling the magic of the universe, in my experience. Everyone has different experiences. So it's beautiful what you do as well. And thank you again.
Oh, thank you. And I know that, I love that you mentioned divine union because you work with your partner as well, yeah?
Yes.
And so it's such an honor and a privilege when we are connected with our divine soul, our mate, our partner in this lifetime or possibly previous, to be able to do this work with. And it is really massive because it's two of us that are rippling that energy and that transformation and that guidance out into the planet. So thank you for the work that you're both doing as well.
Of course. And you said that we're two, we're really one. Like there is oneness
Yeah.
in all of us, but as when you bring two people together, the power, it's not 1 + 1 = 2. 1 + 1 is infinite in its nature. And what we have been able to shift in, I don't want to use time scale, but in 11 or so months is more than we have done in decades and lifetimes as well. Given our templates, well, especially for me, and the reason I've come into this life and what my soul wants to experience, we have been able to do that. And that is the testament to one of the possibilities as to how reality can shift when you dig into those unconscious wounds as to why you don't have access to that which is your birthright, which is unconditional love. And in my experience was I'll be the hyper successful, the boss babe, boss bitch, whatever you want to call it, all these manufactured, distorted feminist ways of being.
Mm.
But the heart always knows what the heart always knows. And the work that you do as well goes deep into being able to access that because it is our birthright.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love how you mentioned that, that two into one and that divine union and that connectedness and oneness. And we are all one with the universe, source, and each other. It's our human experience that creates that identity, which can be, the boss bitch. And I love how you talk about that because there's aspects of me that does that as well, right?
It's time and place, but it's not, it cannot be the totality of the ego construct,
Yeah.
especially when it is used to mask off and armor yourself from your deeper truths.
Oh gosh.
That's when
Yeah.
it becomes very problematic and
Yeah.
illusory.
And yeah, so there's so much that we could dive into. And you mentioned those unconscious wounds and things like that. I want to start, if I can, getting you to tell me what is, I know lots of people would have heard about past lives. Talk to me a little bit about what that work involves.
I'll give a very quick backstory as to
Yeah,
why this is even important. I
yeah.
started on the healing journey when the unconscious forces came to aid, because, paraphrasing Jung's quote, conscious forces had absolutely fried themselves. And I would do a modality after modality, but nothing was deep enough. I felt that I needed to go deeper given the extent of the problems or the challenges and situations that I was facing in the 3D. They weren't born here. So
Mm,
where in the cosmos are they? How do I even locate this? And if I knock my elbow, I can locate the pain. It's right
mm,
here. I
mm,
can tend to it right now. But when there are wounds across lifetimes, I don't know where the source is. So there was that invitation to go deeper. My
mm,
then best friend, now partner, he already had a regression and he wasn't able to go as deep, but he still had a profound experience, even though it didn't feel like that in the moment. I started my podcast and I came across a regressionist up in Brisbane.
mm,
And I was just like, yes, I'm a generator by nature. So if it's an absolute yes, I will make it happen. So I told Daniel at the time, listen, how do you feel about going up to Brisbane for another past life regression? And that we joke it's an optional obligation. He Fast forward a little bit, we're in Brisbane. By this whole time, we were in love with each other, but we had no idea. We were the last two people to find out. We had
mm,
a tarot reading in the marketplace. I'm like, oh, let's entertain the notion if we have a past life together. And the tarot reader found one. We were lovers in a past life. We died together, but not by
mm,
accident at a young age.
mm,
And this was revealing to me because it started to help understand how our unconscious was so considerate, thoughtful. We knew the lay of each other's land. We just did. And we did our tarot readings that evening, trying to figure out more details as to what happened. The next day, Daniel went and had his regression. And in that trance state, all the walls come down.
mm,
Not all the walls that need to come down so that you can receive what you need to in that moment do come down. And that's what the experience that Daniel had.
mm,
And not only that, he was shown lives of the divine masculine and all its different expressions. And that is something that in this life he had been estranged from. He has not,
mm.
like many men today, do not see healthy, beautiful expressions of the masculine. And oh my goodness, is the divine masculine beautiful? And
Oh,
conversation unto itself. He comes out of the regression and he just stares right through me, like into my soul kind of energy. 4 hours later, I don't remember what happened beforehand, but he asked me, how do you feel about starting? How do you feel about us? I'm like, yeah, no, it's all good. That how do you feel about starting something, you know, between us? Paraphrasing the question as well.
yeah.
And it was all yes. And 3 hours after that, I think I'm in love with you. 6 hours after that, I am in love with you. And we actually felt our souls merge in that instance.
Mm,
We felt the physical energy exchange in that moment. And what the regression did was take away so many layers, the higher self, anyone, all benefic entities who were, screaming at us both. It's like, do you not understand? We did not. But in that state, he was able to experience the truth that of how in love he is, as
mm,
was I. It gave me the permission to also see that.
yeah,
So what the regression experience does is you receive exactly what you need to in that moment. This is a
mm,
modality discovered by Dolores Cannon in the 50s when she took a client back a little bit too far and they slipped into a past life. And it shows a template of what has the soul chosen to overcome in
mm,
this life.
mm,
It is also a chance to invoke the higher self directly. You can do that right now, but there are
mm,
barriers, limitations. We need to practice it. Like, I can't go run a marathon today. I go up 18 flights of stairs and I'm still like, okay, I really got to work on this. So I also, it is a skill unto itself. But
mm,
you can ask the higher self absolutely anything that you want. So questions about divine union, questions about where is the love that I seek, my purpose, so on and so forth.
mm.
But it's knowing the questions to ask because, for example, there are contracts that we made across lifetimes that are still binding. It's like today,
Mm,
if I made a contract with you, Leanne, today, and it could be binding for 50 years, even though you could be in a completely different dimension. It remains intact. It is no different in the metaphysical space.
mm,
It is also wounding, as women as well. The witch hunt, or all the decades, the centuries where our voices collectively were punished, threatened,
mm.
persecuted.
Yeah.
We collectively carry that, we individually carry that. Now,
Mm,
I need to go back to that point in time to re-experience it. I don't
mm,
experience the pain of it, but the energy can then transmute because I'm in the present moment with that experience.
mm,
So you get to travel across lifetimes in the present moment, and you are releasing that which is playing out today because
mm.
someone needs to release that energy. It is ever present until it is transmuted.
Yeah. And I love, like, there's so much in there to unpack a little bit for everyone. And I love how you bring in the higher self and the lifetimes and the contracts and the all of those things are kind of weaved in amongst it. What's popped into my awareness as you were talking through that, and I mentioned to you briefly before we came on, that I'd done some past lives, or some past life regressions years ago and hadn't revisited it for a while. What's popped in was some unconscious patterns and woundings and things that were holding me back early on in my work with spirit. And for some reason, I'm being nudged to share this. So, someone that's watching or listening, I trust that this will help you. When I was being nudged and kind of encouraged to step into doing mediumship in particular, on a stage and in that platform setting in front of big groups of people, I had some real massive fears come up. And when I did a past life regression, it brought up quite a lot of the past life experiences around, the witchings and that's been a
Wow.
lot of my past life experiences.
Wow.
Not just one, but three or four. And so I had to move through seeing those experiences to know why the mere mention of the word platform had me like, no, can't do that.
Wow. So you
Um,
froze then.
Froze. And so that past life regression experience showed me that particular lifetime that was important to clear and unravel and heal and just embrace. So it was so huge and so massive that allowed me to then step forward into my work.
That's beautiful. And imagine if you didn't overcome that and you tried to work on it consciously. So you were like, Leanne, just hustle through it and just affirm yourself. And sure, you might have gotten on the next platform, but then what? And then you would have, rubber banded back into that unconscious fear. And then
Mm,
the even, the magnitude of that, you would not share your gift. You would not bring other people closer to each other and therefore spirit.
yeah,
But you
yeah,
located that. And I can only imagine like the persecution energy because of how powerful your gifts are now and then.
yeah.
And now you get to, even that you're doing this is a continuation of your gift. And that's beautiful.
Yeah. And my beautiful husband, is Colombian, and the universe kind of magically put us together. And we both needed to do some healing and clearing around past lifetimes as well. And I know that we've shared past lives together and, in that spiritual space as well. So,
Wow.
one of the things that's popping into my mind, you've mentioned, they're being pulled back into when you're trying to clear things consciously. Talk to me a little bit, and there's things often people experience, whether it's around work or finances or relationships, are kind of the big ones that are popping up.
Mhm.
That we might be kind of going, why is this pattern reappearing and why can't I move through this? Talk to me about some examples of how that might appear if there's a past life connection to it.
Pattern is as pattern does. It repeats. It
Mm,
is what it is going to do. And
mm,
before I was initiated or on different fronts and am still being initiated into the
mm,
realm of the unconscious. I did the things. I did the affirmations, I did the manifestations, I did the vision board, I did the programs, and I'm going to be successful and I'm going to repeat my vision statement. I did the things. But what template was I trying to build that on? The
mm,
foundations were not on love and truth. They were, for me, on deep levels of disempowerment across lifetimes.
mm,
This is what this soul wants to work on in this lifetime. So I had, for example, 2 periods of great success. People would keel over to have switched places with me. But
mm,
then unconsciously, and I wasn't paying attention because my fragmented psyche was not allowing me to pay attention. The
mm,
wheels were falling off. Things started getting on fire. I was doing the same things, let's say in client acquisition, but in 1 year I only signed up $800 and
mm,
I was not paying attention to it. Then I was,
mm,
what was my narrative? Just gotta hustle harder, send out more messages, do more this, do. But nothing was working.
mm,
So what is actually going on? So I did start a little bit of energy clearing. Like you get your chakras clear and you feel great for a little bit of time. But then how come I've just rubber banded back as well? Because the template, the totality of the environment, the template that you've come in with, all of the baggage that has not been released is still playing out.
mm,
So it will automatically go back to that which you are conditioned to. Now, the
mm,
problem for me was I was only working with the mental faculty. I can think, I can have a wonderful intellectual, philosophical conversation, but can I feel? No,
mm,
because I only had a catharsis of the heart in July 2023. All
mm,
my emotions were shoved down because that is what the deep programming across lifetimes had programmed me what to do. That's been coded so
mm.
deeply within. I can't think my way out of that. My ego cannot think its way out of that.
No.
Then what about the physical body? I had no idea that I even had one. I was a perfect floating head.
Mm,
So the body, which is the vehicle, the home for the soul, was not just numbed out. It had no charge. It could not move. So if your physical body cannot move from a spiritual perspective, where can you go? Of course, it's
mm,
going to rubber band back. And what are you going to do? Try flog a dead horse into action? It's not going to work. And
mm,
then, let alone the spirit part, our spirit side, our soul that we, and I know I have, dishonored time and time and time again
mm,
because of the patterns that I was unconsciously trying to uphold. For example, serving 2 masters. What does that make you? A perfect people pleaser and a wonderful doormat. I'll be your teddy bear and I'll be your doormat and I'll be your punching bag because fundamentally, across lifetimes, that's all I think I deserve. So
mm.
I can't have little post-it notes that say you're worth it because the fragmented psyche is not believing that.
Yeah, because and I love how you talk about it as that template, and for viewers or listeners, that template, what's popping in can be things like lack, whether it's lack of success, lack of finances, lack of relationship or love, or people pleasing, or abandonment or
Yeah.
betrayal,
Oh,
or they're all big
that's a
ones,
big
aren't
one.
they? Yeah, that was me, right? And that was a really big, unconscious template in the way that you're explaining that and the languaging that you're using there. Abandonment just kept playing out and playing out and playing out in my relationships.
Where
And
else does that show up? Like perfect arena for it. Yeah.
yeah, and it was abandonment and betrayal and that people pleasing and doormatting and the cheating and the all of those things. And I'm like, what is going on here? And it wasn't until I went, hang on a minute, this is just a pattern that keeps repeating and I need to pause and stop. Where does this sit?
Mm-hmm.
And what's popping in is, I do some work with clients who've gone through trauma in relationships, or my work with criminal intuitive investigations as well. And I'm doing a PhD into mediums working with police on homicides.
Wow.
And so, in amongst, and my beautiful husband has unfortunately experienced two family members passing in that way. So, yeah, him and I have a huge lifetime of work to do,
That's quite the divine mission.
right?
Yeah.
And so, throwing that into our space and our contract and our, is okay, what do we need to clear and work through and heal and, step in order to step into the bigness of this work.
Imagine if you both weren't conscious of any of that, and what kind of relationship that on some very poor, diminished timeline where you both aren't conscious to the nature of all of this, how that trauma could have kept on playing out and how distorted the relationship could have been. And we all see distorted models of relating
Mm,
around us and misuse of power dynamics, and the list goes on. And it's not about diagnosing it, but fundamentally, it is the child within us across lifetimes that continues to suffer because we are not made conscious of things that are playing out from other lives, from
mm,
different dimensions. And until they remain unexplored, like you won't be able to step into like that. I can't even fathom the magnitude of the work that this does. It's, outside my field of awareness, but how much you're releasing as well for people that want that answer, that closure, and so on. And that's
yeah.
what that deep investigation, as you do through your own tools and your own gifts, affords others who may not have their gifts online to
Mm,
explore that as well.
yeah. And it's interesting because even in that work, it was kind of a 5-year journey to step into doing the PhD because there was huge resistance there
Mm.
from a soul level for me to step into that
Wow.
because it's so big.
Yeah.
So, talk to me a little bit, and I'm kind of thinking let's pick a kind of template or a topic area that might relate for people, and how might they work through something if they do have a pattern that's coming up that might be connected to a past life experience. How might they work through that?
Let's use abandonment as a perfect example because
Okay.
that shows up in the workplace of when your boss tells you off. What are they really triggering? They're not triggering your perfect competency. You know how to do your job. They're triggering that fear of being abandoned and left out, or in a relationship that turns into imbalanced dynamics.
Mm,
So if that was something that was predominant in a person's life, even using the example of money, the energy of money abandoning you, that isn't because you might have all the spreadsheets and everything, but there's a 10K bill that's just landed on your doorstep. That is a form of abandonment playing out.
yeah.
So if that was the theme, predominant theme of this lifetime for an individual, and they come into a session and they're starting to demonstrate this pattern, and you can cotton on and think, okay, there is a fear of abandonment. Then when you're in that trance state, it is more than likely the higher self will show you lives where I'll give an example. I had one while I was I think it was a boy, the gender was not too clear, but not also important.
Mm,
And my mother then in that life left me at the market because she was paying attention to my older sibling who had been lost before. So I was the
mm,
forgotten child. And I was standing at the doorway and I was absolutely devastated. But then my spirit guide came, rewrote that memory, and took me into safety. So
mm,
I felt the heart walls. My hands were shaking with the release, and I felt it, and it was so powerful. It was I did
mm,
not know what was happening in the moment, but that's what was happening. So that fear of abandonment in that case had been released. Now, how did that play out for me in this lifetime? I cried all throughout kindergarten. I would stand at the window with my hands up against the glass waiting for my mum to come pick me up because I was not convinced she would come pick me up, even though she did every single day. But I was 3 or 4. And
Mm,
then how did that play out into adult relationships, especially around maternal or paternal impactors? I would
mm,
give myself over to please, to get the love and the illusion of safety that you won't leave me. Hello, Floof. And that's how it played out until one of the key types of wounding, not types of wounding, but the key attachments was released. Another
mm,
past life regression, I was a 12-year-old boy. And my parents just left me with a small sack of pounds and said, "Good luck, we're moving to the country. You're old enough now." Great. How I did get married in that lifetime, but I had a lot of anger issues and abandonment issues. So re-experiencing that and how that then played out, I started realizing the dynamic of what I was doing in this lifetime, and I left certain situations. It also allowed me to have conscious relating with my partner and
mm.
to instill more freedom into the relationship and not be like, well, you didn't call for 3 hours. Like, I'm not like that, but there are people who do that. So
Yeah.
a person can experience that so deeply and in the present moment when they are in that trance state, I don't want to say under hypnosis, they're very well aware of what's happening.
Mm,
Then they start feeling that freedom return to their
mm,
decisions, to their relating, to their partnerships. The,
mm,
the behaviors that manifested from that wounding are no longer important. They seem ridiculous to you as well. So
mm.
you start to change your own behaviors consciously, but also with intent.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love how you've talked through those experiences with past lives as well. They're reminding me of some of the others that I've become aware of throughout my journey. So we have some similar experiences, which is interesting.
It's so beautiful to discover, and that's what I mentioned before we got on, that there is such a beauty in bringing all of this to light because you really realize that you are more than the character that you're playing in this lifetime. You are more than the name that you have been given. You are more than your circumstances. You really do have a first-hand experience of connecting with the fact
Mm,
that you are a soul on a spiritual journey, because we can sit here and intellectualize it, but until you experience all of these different characters of self, then you're like, okay, I'm understanding what's happening here and I want to know more. And that's the beauty in this modality and any exploration really on the spiritual path.
yeah. Yeah, awesome. And I love that we use that abandonment pattern or template as a bit of an example for people, and to get everyone to think about, if abandonment is playing out, it's an energy that might be playing out in your world, and how does it thread through different experiences, and how does it show up in your world? What does it look like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like in your body?
Mm.
And if it's a thread that you kind of can't consciously clear, then perhaps asking that next question, and is there a past life thing going on here?
Absolutely. And won't go into too much detail, but people find themselves with narcissistic um, people. Some are out of free will. There is, of course, the aspect of free will, but you could be trying to clear karma from past lives.
Yeah.
You don't just bump into people by accident and hope for the best. Like, the universe is not daft in that way. It doesn't work that way, but there really is an answer to every situation, pattern, thread that people are looking to discover. The
Mhm.
question is, where is the root? And more likely than not, it is much far out of our conscious awareness and ability with our own limited paradigms to experience and explore.
Yeah, awesome. Now, talk to me a little bit about the word identity.
There is an aspect which is we need it's a construct. We wear all these layers of cloaking. Elinor is a cloak, Leanne is a cloak.
Yeah.
Then there is the cloak of the body, that is a construct as well. Then we do layer all of these things on so that we do need to play a character in the world. I mean, what else is there for a soul to do? What else is there for a self to do other than to try on all of the different clothing and experiences that you can in the infinite cosmos? What else can a Godhead do other than to seek to experience itself over and over and over and over again? And it is that journey of then we put on the layers to take off the layers to understand the truth, to then do it all over again. It's when we have an attachment, and I do have that conditioning as well, where you are so microscopic to aspects of the identity that it then blocks you to experiencing the truth of your identity, the truth of who we are as a collective, always meant to be. Because when you can get back to that state, and as my partner does, bring it back here, and then reality unfold in ways that are so wondrous and benefic to who you were always meant to be.
Yeah.
So we have this identity that is constructed through deep conditioning, not always of this life, but of many lives that are not what the soul chose. It's what the ego was chosen through societal, cultural, individual, parental conditioning. And this is more than just expressing as, you know, your parents did banking, so now you're in banking. I mean, that's one part of it, but that's far from what it means to be conditioned. And it takes much more than a mindset journey to unravel that.
Yeah.
You do need to wear the cloaking. This isn't about diminishing the ego or removing the ego. In this world, in this dimension, there is a place for it, especially with how the world is set up at this point. But the identity, the cloaks that you want to wear, we want them to be that which the soul chose, that which the soul has come here for. Otherwise, the abrasion, the disassociation, the friction that we experience when we are tricking ourselves into, this is who I am. It's like, is that what the soul chose? Does the soul care what your work contract says? The soul doesn't care at all. So what identity are we constructing for ourselves? It is all a construct, but we need to be conscious that there is a construct, and what is it that we're doing with that?
Yeah. Yeah, I love how you talk about that, because, you know, on a soul level, we are all and everything and connected, you know, to everything, and can choose to bring through whatever identity or whatever aspects of our identity we choose to in this lifetime, and kind of anchor into that or ground into it, whether it's for a little bit of time or you know, a longer time. So there's so much that goes on with that. And I like how you talk about clothes, because I often talk to people about, you know, relationship wise, your wardrobe, or even work or opportunities wise, your wardrobe can represent where you are with relationships and opportunities, and how much you hold on to or willing to let go of what doesn't fit and feel right anymore.
Exactly.
And so it's the same with our identity in some ways.
Absolutely. And that's a whole other conversation
Exactly.
onto itself, but we don't automatically come with a permission to change clothes. It takes an immense amount of power for some people to know that they can change clothes, and they can do it on such a deep level that generations, ancestors, lineages, whatever, are absolutely crying with joy because you are the one that did that. And
Yeah.
this goes beyond far more about how your LinkedIn profile looks and what your Instagram bio says. This is about every cell in your body resonating in that direction. It is feeling it in your body. And we don't feel our identity, we think our identity, and they are not the same identity.
No. And like you said, we could talk about that for hours. So maybe we'll have you on for another episode to dive into that a little bit deeper.
That would be amazing. And thank you so much for this space and your time. And that felt like no time at all, which is a testament when things are done from spirit and not from ego.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with everybody.
My
Can
pleasure.
you let people know where they can connect with you if they'd like to know more about the work you do?
Our website is truthofyou.com.au. I'm the Elinor Moshe on Instagram and Elinor Moshe on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you once again for connecting in. And for those of you who want to know more about my work, jump on the barefootmedium.com.au or the Barefoot Medium on Facebook and Instagram as well. Until next time, thank you all for joining me for Barefoot with Spirit podcast show.